Hello, everyone. I am here with Katie Lain of Thrive Alcohol Recovery for our very last episode in season 4 of our podcast. This year, we have been the option, or instead of Options Save Lives podcast, we've been the Level Up with Your Sinclair Method Coaching podcast. Same format, new name, because we've really focused in this season on how individual coaching and individual advice can be so much more powerful in reaching your Sinclair method and recovery goals because, let's face it, general advice is generally good, but it might not fit you. So today, Katie is joining me to talk all things extinction, what it is, what it isn't, what the misconceptions and myths are. And like even as we were getting ready today, we're already really diving in. So this should be a great episode. It will be up on our YouTube, hopefully by the end of today, no later than tomorrow, and we'll have it up on our Spotify most likely next week. So welcome, Katie.
Hey Jenny, yeah, great to see you. Great to be here. Hey everyone.
I just want to make sure I've got things set up so that if any questions happen to come in, we don't miss them. So we're talking about extinction and uh, so many different ways people talk about extinction. Um, so let's start with what you've heard and experienced of extinction and how you approach this in coaching and over at Thrive.
Yeah, well, I personally lean heavily on my own personal experience with going from somebody who had a daily obsession and compulsion to drink alcohol for 10 years to somebody who, after a year on the Sinclair method, was having a glass of wine once a month, effortlessly controlling my drinking, genuinely not wanting to drink other days, genuinely preferring alcohol-free time. Like I would weigh the option of should I drink, should I not drink? And I'd be like, nah, doesn't really sound good. It just, my motivation to drink just like faded over the course of the year on the Sinclair method. So when I talk about extinction, I feel thankful that I have my own personal experience to lean on of the contrast of what it was like to be obsessed and literally like worshiping alcohol every day for 10 years, equating it to a survival need. Now I understand that's kind of what's happening in the brain to somebody who could drink and have control every time I drank to I didn't crave alcohol anymore. And I preferred alcohol-free time. So when I talk about extinction, that's kind of my definition of it, those three things, where when we drink, we have control, we have an off switch that we can listen to. We don't crave alcohol in the day to day. We might have thoughts about drinking or a slight craving, but it doesn't control our life anymore. Like, sure, we can drink, but we're not mad if we're not drinking. And then for a lot of people, when they're, at that endpoint of the Sinclair method or pharmacological extinction, they, in my experience, true for me as well, like they spend a lot of their time alcohol free. They're usually not drinking most days during the week, for example. So those are kind of my three signs of how I define extinction. Now, I know you and I have talked about like, and what I've learned over the years, and I think was true from my experience, I just didn't know it at the time, was that there's like two types of extinction, if I were to say that. Like there's the pharmacological extinction, which naltrexone is working on to, block the reward reinforcement from the alcohol. So our brain's not getting the same level of reward. But when that happens, over time, we need to simultaneously pair that with changing our behaviors. And a lot of people on the Sinclair method, as you know, are very self-aware. They'll say, I don't really feel like drinking, but I'm drinking out of habit. Like they know what's going on. The craving isn't there as much, but they're doing the behavior anyway. So in my coaching and in Thrive, we try to highlight those two types of extinction. So people aren't expecting the pill to do everything, but they realize, okay, the medication is going to empower me to make habit changes so that over time I can extinguish these behaviors that are, driving me to drink or overdrink. It doesn't mean being abstinent or alcohol free, but it means, I'm not drinking because it's Friday night and I'm bored anymore. And this is a gradual process over time with the Sinclair method. Yeah, so those are some of my thoughts and experience with extinction.
And in general sense, your understanding of it is not wrong, because your number 2 point was the cravings.
Mm.
The loss of cravings. And those cravings are what the pharmacological extinction works on.
Yeah.
That allowed you to then have more control, which was something that was your number one. Your point number one was you gained more control because you were not constantly focused on fighting your cravings. All of your capacity was not going to craving busting and denying. So your point number 2, the start of, okay, the cravings are significantly lowered or gone. That gave you the ability to feel more in control, which then led to number 3 was the results you got from the combination of your first and second point. Was you found that you didn't want to drink as much. And that was partially because of the extinction process, partially because you were aware of the fact that you had the ability to have some control, and then you added in those behavior changes. Now, extinction is a learning process. So every single time a person takes the medication, metabolizes it, and it blocks their receptors, and then they drink, and that those endorphins don't hit the receptors, there's a reason this is called an extinction session.
Mm-hmm.
The body, the entire nervous system is learning alcohol does not equal a reward.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes time. Now, we were talking beforehand. I asked you if you were bilingual.
Yeah.
And you know a little bit of French. And learning your body learning extinction is very much like learning a new language. You know some French, but you don't consider yourself bilingual.
Right. I wish I was.
But you have learned some of the language. And so to an extent, your learning process of, I'm sure you've had some words that, you run across and they're just, no matter how many times you try, they probably seem completely unpronounceable.
Yeah, I'm laughing because my husband makes fun of me with certain words that I'm not going to say. Well, I could say them here, but I'll butcher them.
But you wouldn't say, because you don't have a full mastery of the French language, that you don't know French.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know some of it. And if I ask you, well, how long does it take an American to learn French? Based on what you have personally experienced, could you even give me an answer?
Yeah, it would depend on so many different factors, right?
And that is the exact same thing with extinction. How many repetitions do you get?
Yeah.
How consistent are you with the ways you practice? Are you focusing on one specific part of the language? Are you trying to scatter all over the place and learn and unlearn different things? Do you have a background in other languages that are similar? Do you get to hear it every day? All of these things will make a difference for how long it takes to learn a language. Yeah. And with extinction, it's how long have you had the pattern of drinking that you're trying to replace? Do you have multiple patterns of drinking? Because Dr. Sinclair theorized that each drinking pattern required its own extinction process. So if you have a binge drinking when you're out with friends pattern, but a drinking heavily when you're at home every night pattern, and then when you go to certain restaurants or events, you drink in, like, all of these are different drinking patterns and behaviors that you've learned over time. And each one needs its own set of extinction sessions.
Yep. 100%.
So
I
what
mean, just a quick, in my case, I was drinking a lot at home and then out on weekends, binge drinking. And I could see that I exercised more control at home sooner on the Sinclair method than I did out. I could still overdrink out socially because I had less practice and experience. And to talk about all the other factors, I have a little bit of social anxiety. It was the party mode. Maybe I'd forget to eat when I was out. So there was a lot of different factors at play. Whereas at home, it was a more controlled kind of environment.
Right. And so years ago, someone on social media, very well meaning, decided that they would set up a Facebook page and have people declare their extinction date.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the background behind this. It was all a very pure, good, solid reason. It was to help people be enthusiastic in sharing their success, in motivating other people, in helping the entire TSM community see that recovery and success is absolutely possible. Unfortunately, what this has, the unintended side effect over the years, what has happened is that people have now equated, when I have full control of my drinking and I'm not thinking about it anymore and I'm not enjoying what I'm drinking, then and only then have I reached extinction. And so the problem with that is, again, it keeps people from seeing those other events along the way. So maybe you have 4 different drinking patterns in different scenarios, and you've completed the extinction process in one, but not the others. Mm-hmm. And you think you're failing because you don't have the equivalent of mastering an entire language. You only have parts. And so what I see a lot of is people are reaching that 6 to 9 month space in time on the Sinclair method, and they're ready to give up because they don't think it's working. Because they're so focused on, I have to have 100% complete control for this to be working for me, that they're overlooking the fact that they are simply at that stage where the alcohol equals reward less, or alcohol no longer equals reward lesson has been learned. Mm-hmm. But the behavior change, the habit disruption, I knew I don't crave it anymore. I could probably take it or leave it, but I decided to drink anyway. That hasn't been disrupted yet. And where so many people think, this isn't working for me anymore. I'm failing at this. That stuck point generally means you're just ready for the next level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I see that a lot with people where they may even have periods of like months where they feel consistent control over their drinking and, lots of alcohol-free days, not really craving. Maybe they're like, oh, maybe I'm at the end point of the treatment, but then out of the blue, their drinking spikes back up. And again, it could be different scenarios, but also emotional life events, even celebratory things like it being summertime. Like, oh, I'm really having a lot of social functions this summer and I end up drinking more. And yeah, I really view this whole Sinclair method journey as unlearning an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, learning a healthy relationship to it. But in addition to that, cultivating a life that doesn't revolve around alcohol anymore. Because when we have alcohol use disorder for so long, that's been, a huge part of our lives, maybe even the center of our lives for some people. So it really is this process, not only taking naltrexone and drinking, like that's, the starting point, that's the key of it. But man, like, for me, I tell people alcohol and drinking was literally my favorite hobby, my life purpose. I didn't really have much I enjoyed to do outside of life. When I was on the Sinclair method, I was like, what am I even good at? What do I even like to do? Um, so it was like starting from scratch. And if I had only drank on naltrexone and not kind of done the other work, to change habits and kind of build out new hobbies and passions and things, I could have stayed stuck there for a while. And I always tell people too, like, the kind of plateau period you're talking about where people are maybe 6 or 9 months in and they're feeling discouraged, there's a lot to learn there. We can get frustrated with ourselves because our habits aren't changing, and that can bring about insight like, oh, I noticed that I'm like always taking naltrexone at 5 o'clock after work. Like, why am I doing that? I should go for a jog first or something like that. So, some people I think a lot of people on the Sinclair method are very self-aware when they're stuck in habit loops, but the challenges are like, okay, how do I get out of it? To your point, you said you're ready for the next level. And they're like, okay, well, what is that? What does that even look like? And back to what you were saying originally, like the benefit of one-on-one coaching and personalized support is just that, because, in the Sinclair method world, we talk so much about habit change, mindful drinking, logging your drinks, but it's like, okay, well, what does that mean exactly? Or what does that mean specifically for me or my style of drinking? And so, that's why my kind of go-to is always like meet the medication halfway and helping people have this frame of mind that naltrexone is key. I always say it's like the key that unlocks the prison door, but that's what it's going to do. We've got to get up, step out, and build a life, outside the prison that won't put us back in it. And that's where our part comes in. Yeah.
Yeah, I find that among my clients, there's always this sense of surprise when, and they'll come to me and they're stuck, and I'm like, okay, so here's something I want you to do. When you finish each glass, ask yourself, do I want more?
Mm-hmm.
And then don't judge your answer, because what I find that, it's like people think work means, oh, I've got to go confront my shadow self. I've got to like tear my insides and psyche apart.
And then they're like, no, that's too much. I'm just going to give up and drink.
The biggest piece of work that I find people on the Sinclair method need, especially for people who want to be moderate drinkers, is untangling the societal pressure to believe that if you choose to drink tonight, that is a bad choice. Because if your goal is moderation and your goal is not to give it up, are you prepared to consider every single drink for the rest of your life a bad choice? Because if so, like, you're setting yourself up to fail. So one of the things that I highly encourage people to do is just remind themselves, I have the choice. The more you accept and embrace the fact that the choice to drink or not drink is yours, then it becomes over time easier to align that choice with what your value is for that night. Because maybe you do want to go out and have a glass of champagne to toast New Year's.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly okay. If you're beating yourself up for things like that, you're really making things a lot harder on yourself than you need to. Remember that this is all about you being empowered to choose. And that's what Extinction gives you back, that power to choose. It's also...
And I want...
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry. No, just to piggyback on what you're saying, I think that's really important for people to think about. And as I reflect on my own journey, kind of coming into that choice or feeling of empowerment, that's a transition in and of itself, because for so long we felt like our drinking was beyond our choice because the
Right.
craving was so strong. It was like, I have to give into it or I'm going to go crazy. And so transitioning from that craving kind of titrating down over time, and then us realizing we have more autonomy now over our drinking and free choice, it's like, oh, that's a certain level of responsibility I've never had before. Like, well, when do I choose to drink? I've unconsciously, kind of impulsively, have been drinking every day for 20 years. Like, what does my relationship with alcohol look like if I'm in the driver's seat or in control? So just to kind of point out the fact that that's not necessarily even a, easily from A to B process either, learning to understand that you're regaining your control and you have that choice back.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time when I'm coaching, a lot less on, okay, so unless it's specifically a goal for my client to have to add in and increase their alcohol free days, we don't even talk about how much you're drinking up and down for the most part. Most of it
Mm.
is, okay, so how did you feel about your drinking? Did it align with what your choices were? How can you how can you set yourself up for success on an everyday basis? How
Mm-hmm.
can you be gentler with yourself when you drink and remind yourself that if it is your choice, that it is your choice.
Mm-hmm.
And because I see it especially in people who have a history with AA, that that guilt that comes with any drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot to unlearn and unpack.
It is, yeah. And we have a at least one course video in our program talking about that, like kind of reframing how you think about alcohol use disorder. And I think it's when people can understand even just the basic science of how the Sinclair method works, it can take that weight off and give them a bit of permission to drink. But I was just talking with someone yesterday who spent more than 10 years in AA, and she was kind of telling me that in AA, drinking basically, you're kind of brainwashed, for lack of a better word, to believe that it equals death. So, like, to understand people who have spent even just a little time in that program, I can understand their fear around reintroducing alcohol. But if they're serious about getting better and they're serious about compliance, it's like, just understand the basic science of it, view this as a treatment protocol. Don't view it like, oh, I'm going on a bender and a relapse. It's I'm drinking to heal my brain over time. But yeah, it is a process. And for some people, I see them struggle with that for a while on the method to get out of that cycle of guilt linked to drinking. Or maybe even, I know for me, I loved the fact that the treatment allowed me to drink. I was like, this is an amazing thing about that. And people may feel guilty that they like that about the Sinclair method, which, yeah,
Yeah,
again, it's
I
something that can be unlearned as well. But yeah,
yeah,
sorry.
and while we're on the topic of enjoying, like I can't tell you how many times over the years I've heard people say, I actually enjoy my drinks more now that I'm in control,
Mm-hmm.
because fear doesn't taste good. Uh, and
Yeah.
so losing the fear that a drink will lead to a spiral,
Yes.
actually allows, and so there are people who, again, because they believe extinction means I'm not going to like anything about alcohol ever again, um, they think that it's not working because they still actually enjoy their drink.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, 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 you're completely misunderstanding. Like, that's it. Some people may stop enjoying it, and that's great. If that works for them, that's fine, completely valid. But there are also people who it's like, oh yeah, yeah. I've heard people, wine drinkers that will drink more expensive bottles because now they're sipping it. They're actually savoring the flavor and the taste, and just knowing that they can do that without losing control, allows them the joy that they first, well before they got addicted, that, but it's what they first had. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, the medication isn't going to magically make this terrible for you. That's not, that's not what it's even designed to do.
Yeah.
Maybe it will, but not, that's not something that you can count on, and it's not a good expectation. And I think that's where a lot of the misunderstanding about what extinction does versus what your habit changes and other work is, really, it does a disservice because people are waiting for that magical moment.
Mm-hmm.
They're not trusting that the power's back in their own hands. And people, like, once people start feeling that empowerment and that control and knowing that, oh, hey, okay, I do have a choice, and learn to feel comfortable in that, because that does take time. Um, like, then these huge breakthroughs come through, and it's like you've probably finished that alcohol does not equal reward extinction process a long time ago. And then, after you get to that process, everything else after that, you're just reinforcing the lesson with the
Mm-hmm.
medication. But you can't point to a singular day where, oh, hey, extinction, I wasn't extinct yesterday, but today I am. There's a reason a lot of people will look back and say, yeah, I think maybe 6 months ago or so, there was a change and I didn't realize it at the time. I think it can
Mm-hmm.
only be seen in retrospect, and in a we must have results mentality. When you can't see something until it's long past you, you're spending a lot of time thinking that you're failing when you really shouldn't. And like, life's hard enough. Why add another 6, 12, 24 months on top of feeling miserable and feeling a lack of control when you're almost there?
Yeah. Yeah, I always tell people, like, I think it's our human nature to compare ourselves to others. And I'll hear people say, oh, it just seems like everyone gets there in 6 months. And I'm always like, what stories are you listening to? Because I don't see that. I mean, of course it happens, but like the majority of people that I see in the Facebook groups or in our program or elsewhere that I just talked to, it takes more than 6 months to get there. But I think we can kind of remember the quicker responders and then compare ourselves to that and just want to beat ourselves up because we're not there fast enough. But there's no race to it. There's so much to be learned throughout the process. And even in the times if the drinking does go up, what I see over and over again with people in our program is they might have a weekend where they drink too much. They're taking naltrexone, but like they drink double, from the past week, but then they recalibrate back again. It's not like this months long bender where they're off on the deep end. It's typically like they course correct and they're back again. And so that's another great thing about this method. Even if you're not in a place where you feel like you have your regained control again consistently, usually the over drinking sessions aren't long lasting. You kind of bounce back again.
And that is exactly how non-addicted drinkers drink.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's, hey, lots going on, let's have a little bit more. Hey, things are rough, it's a lot more this week. Okay, this is not sustainable, course correct, back. Like, and so it's unreasonable for people to believe that naltrexone is going to solve all of that. And even non-addicted drinkers drink in that pattern. It's one
Yeah.
of the reasons why I try so hard to break this myth of the normal drinker, because there's no real such thing as a normal drinker. There are addicted drinkers and people who have never been addicted, and you can never be addicted and still drink very problematically. The difference is you don't have the cravings pushing you for more. That's
Well,
the difference.
and it's such a personal relationship with alcohol too. I feel like it really is a relationship that each of us have where someone could be drinking a bottle of wine a night right now and they're perfectly happy with it. They don't want to make a change. And who am I to say that they need to? Like that's their personal life, their personal business. Maybe their doctor will want to talk to them about it. But then there's people who are drinking like a glass of wine a night and they're questioning, is this problematic? And that's like, a very considerate, like low risk drinking. So because people will ask me, is my drinking too bad for the method or is it bad enough for the method? And I'm like, if you in any way feel like your drinking is causing problems in your life, then maybe it's something for you to consider.
And it doesn't even
um
have to necessarily be a problem. But if you're concerned about it,
mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe you're getting older and alcohol is disrupting your sleep much more noticeably than before.
Right.
Maybe you just aren't comfortable with the fact that yeah, it might only be one glass a night, but it's been one glass a night for the month, and where is this going?
Mm-hmm.
Like all it takes is you having some personal concern and wanting to if you want to make a change, go for it.
Yeah, and I think I'm curious what you think about, because with the Sinclair method, people really get to define what role alcohol plays in their life. There's not like this objective measurement of like AA where you're just abstinent and it's easy to measure. But I find that for people, their goals can evolve over time of what, how much they want to drink, how often they want to drink, what their ideal relationship with alcohol looks like. But even that can be a bit feel like a bit of responsibility, I guess, on someone's shoulders. Well, what do I want this to look like, and how should it be, for me personally?
And
uh, but it's an empowering thing too. Like I get to choose. Oh, like okay, when we're used to kind of being told what it should be.
and the difference between AA or any other abstinence based treatment and the Sinclair method is while you're defining that now, you don't have to keep that definition
Right.
forever. You can say, you know what, maybe for right now, I just want to drink one night a week. And then maybe in 6 months to a year, you say, I'm going to see if I can do 6 months alcohol free.
Yeah.
And then you can say, you know what, maybe I'll go back to, just on occasion and and all of that is okay. And it's I when I'm coaching people, I'm less concerned about what it is and how they want to define than I am about, are you feeling empowered to define it for yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's it, it's like it's your life, it's your situation, it's your stressors, your triggers. How do I help as a coach help you to learn how to trust yourself to make the decisions so that those choices align with your overall values and goals,
Mm-hmm.
whatever those might be?
Yeah. And
Be-
it can change over time. Like sometimes when I talk to people when they're first starting the method, I get this sense that maybe they feel guilty that their long-term goal isn't abstinence. Like, oh, maybe I'll be abstinent one day, but I don't know now. And again, the beauty of the Sinclair method is you don't like that's first of all, it's not a like requirement on the treatment at all. And again, the goals you have today may evolve. Like I never intended to go alcohol free, but it happened. But if someone would have told me when I was starting the treatment, you need to be alcohol free, I would have been like, oh no, like that would have put me into a panic.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, just giving ourselves permission, because being able to drink with control is possible for most people on this treatment. And I love what Dr. Michelle Perrone says. And it's so simple, but she says, drinking isn't the problem. Excessive drinking is the problem. And so for us, especially for those of, people who've been in AA, like drinking has been like the devil, like never touch it, don't go there. But when we can kind of shift our perspective and realize like, oh, like that's not really the problem. It's when I don't feel like I have control or I don't feel empowered. And with this treatment, like you can get empowered. And sometimes on my videos, maybe you see it too. People are like, why are you encouraging people to drink poison? I'm like, because it can enhance life. Like, and I'm advocating for people to quote unquote drink responsibly. And with
But
the Sinclair
the
method, they
other
can,
thing is you're not advocating for people to drink.
yeah,
People are already drinking.
yeah,
You're advocating for, if you're going to drink, there's a way to not be out of control. And
yeah.
there, like, that's a huge difference. As you know, I'm in the process of finishing up an in-depth coach training program, and we're
Mm-hmm.
starting with the professional level, because the wait list was way longer than we expected, which is great. There are a lot of people who are interested in learning how to be a good, responsible TSM coach, so that there's more support options out there. And then once that's done, we will then roll out for peer level folks, hopefully in the second part of next year. So, one of the questions that was presented to me by someone on the wait list was, so how do I communicate the Sinclair method in a way that doesn't, that's ethical and doesn't encourage someone to drink?
Mm,
And I'm like, yeah, you're never encouraging people to drink. You've got drinkers coming to you for help lowering what they're drinking or
mm-hmm.
stopping what they're drinking. They already have the behavior. You're not looking at people who are non-drinkers and saying, "Hey, I think you should drink." So, but to do it, go take this pill and use this method. Like, the first thing I tell somebody, if they tell me, "Hey, I've been sober for 2 or 3 years. I'm learning about the Sinclair method. I'm thinking about it." The first thing I tell them is, if you're not at imminent risk of relapse, don't start. Learn, have a backup plan. Only you know when your relapse is on the horizon.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have something that's working for you, don't change it. As long as your
Yeah,
tools are working, let those tools work for you, because you've got it under control the way you have it.
yeah,
If you are at imminent risk of relapse, if you are on that verge and your tools are no longer working for you, you're going to drink whether or not you've got naltrexone, whether or not you understand what the Sinclair method is or have a backup plan. But
yeah,
man, if you can have a backup plan that eases that instead of, potentially killing you,
yeah.
you know, I, it's like, no, I'm on the Sinclair method. I mean, I've been doing this for almost 13 years now. I have never once encouraged a person to drink.
Right. Yeah. It's, and like you said, with people who, like, I know people personally who've gone from AA and sobriety to the method, and they just knew that what AA or abstinence was offering them wasn't sustainable. And so whenever, like me too, when people are considering that transition, I'm like, think about it, don't rush into it, like be really confident that you want to do it. And the other thing I say is, like, view it as a treatment. This isn't you just going back to relapsing again and falling back into it. Take it seriously. It's a treatment to help your brain, unlearn this disorder and get you back in a place of control. And two, like, again, like, alcohol can be such a beautiful thing in life. It brings people together, fine wine, delicious beer, all of that. And I know there's this kind of messaging out there that, like, no amount of alcohol is safe with that meta-analysis or whatever that was done. And even though I don't drink anymore, I'm like, I don't want to make alcohol like the enemy, because I mean, I see my husband, he enjoys delicious French wines, but he doesn't have a problem and it enhances his life and he enjoys it. And so I don't think people need to feel like, okay, I need to get to abstinence through the Sinclair method. Otherwise I'm like failing. Um, Again, if you're drinking with control, it's like, I don't see any harm to it, but
Yeah, and I
sometimes I
and
get,
I take it in a different context, but we agree. Um, it is true that no amount of alcohol is physically good for you. Like, there is no amount that is beneficial, but there's also pollution in the air we breathe. Every time we open a plastic water bottle, we're consuming microplastics. There's no amount of
Right.
microplastics that is safe for us to consume. Yet we're inhaling things, we're drinking things, we're eating things that have, like, literally everything we do in our life has some measurable risk factor that goes along with it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's up to every individual to decide what risk factor for various things
Right.
are tolerable, because then you start looking at I mean, you want to get really granular. There's alcohol in a lot of fruit juices, in hamburger buns, in bananas that are like, so you're going to ingest alcohols even if you're not drinking.
Yeah.
And no, that alcohol that you're picking up in a banana or a hamburger bun is just as toxic on an alcohol level as the alcohol you drink. So like, do you want to be absurd and say, okay, well, zero anything that is completely unhealthy, or
Right.
because you can't live. You have to be able, you have to live your life, and you have to
Exactly.
have the ability to choose. So yes, in a lab setting, in a very strict, like, myopic viewpoint of what alcohol does in the body, it's not healthy for us. But you, like, so are a thousand different things.
Right. Yeah.
So why is alcohol the end all be all of enemies? You know, it's
It kind of goes back to like the AA messaging and abstinence, and I mean even the prohibition period, I'm sure as well. It's kind of a culture here where of course there's people with alcohol use disorder in Europe and stuff as well, but it's interesting to go over there and just see how people use it as a way. Like the wine pours are much smaller, the beer pours are much smaller. It's not used in social settings to get drunk. Of course there are people using it that way, but a lot of the people in the culture, they have a glass of wine with their meal and it's really enjoyed and savored. And I think that's a beautiful thing about the Sinclair method. And what I hear people say a lot, like, I can't imagine never drinking again. If I go to Europe, I want to enjoy some European wine. And I'm like, that's amazing. You can. And I'm
yeah,
sure it would enhance your vacation.
right,
Yeah.
because you're building memories, you're having social contact, and there are other things that go into it. So we've got about 15 minutes left, and I want to backtrack a little to something that you said earlier. You brought up uh, you said the word responder, and since we're talking about extinction, and since we're talking as our main overarching topic today, I want to talk a little bit about uncoupling response with results. Because, again, every single time someone takes their medication and it blocks their receptors and they drink and those endorphins don't bind, they are responding to the message. Now, those responses are at a very small, incremental level. Results and responses are not the same. The results are the things you can see, the things you can measure, the things you can notice. It's I realized I wasn't having a craving and didn't need this anymore, but drank it anyway. In that scenario, your results are that you might be thinking that your results are that you drank anyway, and so therefore you have not responded. Whereas your results, where the extinction process is concerned, was you noticed that you didn't actually need it anymore.
Yeah.
And so I think that, again, a lot of people, they conflate results and response forgetting that the response is on that microscopic level within your nervous system, within your brain, within your opioid system. And the results are a combination of the medication reducing your craving, you recognizing that you have some level of choice, whether or not you're capable of embracing that yet, and then the behavior change that you actively work to incorporate. And so I think over the years, like slow responder, rapid responder has really taken on a different meaning from what I think is helpful. Whereas some people are going to have very quick results. Again, back to learning a language. What is your situation going into this? What tools do you already have? What knowledge is already inside your brain? Right. Do you have, a decade's worth of coping mechanisms that you can employ alongside the method? Do you have, has your life gone to hell and back, and your capacity to deal with any of it might be really, really low, and it's like all of these things factor into the results. And so I'm really working hard to try to get the message out that the results need to be decoupled from what extinction is, because it's a product of extinction and and all of the variables.
Yeah,
because like you and I could have like a completely similar background. We could have the same goals, and if you're in a more supportive place where you have, you have help, you have a coach, you have a therapist, you have a supportive husband, you have security in your job and your living situation, and I'm out here with complete opposite, you have the capacity to actually pay attention to your habits and to actually work with trying to disrupt them and to change them and make them better. Whereas my situation might be that I'm just in survival mode all time. And so it's going to take me a long time before I can even think about my habits. And the thing is, I think people want to heap additional judgment on themselves in those situations when their capacity, because their life is just in upheaval. They just don't have the bandwidth to make a whole bunch of changes. And it's like, okay, yeah, it might take you a little longer to see the results you're looking for. That's not because it's not working for you. In most cases, it's because you don't have the additional support systems that can help you to feel less in survival mode all the time.
Yeah. And, I think when we have alcohol use disorder, the state of our mind and emotional state for a lot of us is in a really dark place. And I think one of the symptoms of alcohol use disorder is beating ourselves up, being really hard on ourselves, because there's so much shame linked to not having control and maybe being out of integrity with, our promises. We're not going to drink today. And then we drink today. And when you do that repeatedly for 10 years, you really don't believe or trust yourself anymore. So that's a really low place a lot of us are in when we start this treatment. And so something we often just encourage people to do, and it's easier said than done, but learning to respect and show compassion to yourself, give yourself grace through this process. And there's different ways to go about it. But I think that is really important to the healing journey, because if we're hard on ourselves, it's just stressing out our nervous system and making us want to drink again. And also, just part of this healing journey, we can easily dismiss the progress that we've had so far, whether we're a month in or 6 months in. You're nodding your head. People do this often where they're like, I'm not seeing any results. I'm so discouraged. And it's like, well, what was your drinking like when you started? And usually there's like, oh, you know what? This has changed. That's changed. I'm doing this now. And so to kind of zoom out when you're in that dark place to realize how far you've come. And like what we do in our program is encourage people to notice and celebrate the small wins. Like that's something we do every week because that's how this treatment works. Like, I mean, they'll say, oh, I'm not blacking out anymore. I know that's not a big deal, but and I'm like, no, it is a big deal. You're not blacking out anymore. Don't
It's
dismiss
funny
it.
because what everybody thinks is a small win, every time somebody's, oh, well, this is just a really small thing, they're huge.
Right.
Like every small win is actually real. It's a win. It's huge. So I mean, like I encourage people, like it's like don't even like forget the word small. You're hedging yourself. You're holding yourself back from fully celebrating what you have accomplished. It's like, no, that's not a small win. That like every win is a win. And
Yeah.
I don't like I want people to celebrate those as though it is the biggest win because yeah, honestly, it's huge.
Yeah. And don't ignore those things that seem insignificant. Like that, I love the quote of the greatest form of motivation is progress. So when we're seeing ourselves make progress, that just builds our motivation. So if you're noticing, hey, I started drinking an hour later today, that's progress. Let me celebrate that and be excited about it.
Yeah.
And that's usually what the results are with this method is small and gradual but continuous. And I think a lot of us are used to grand gestures, whether it's going sober for 30 days or going on a strict diet, and it feels like we're doing a lot when we do that, but usually the results aren't sustainable. So yeah, TSM is slow and steady, but the results long term can be permanent where you actually heal and get better.
Yeah. And and I was nodding my head and laughing because I think about one client that was absolutely 100% positive that nothing was working for them. They were on the verge of considering going to detox, and they had sessions 2 weeks apart. I'm like, okay, let's talk about your drinking. And they were like, yeah, I'm still not seeing anything. And I'm like, what do you mean you're not seeing something? You have reduced 15% sustained over the last 2 weeks. And they were like, well, thank you for saying that. And I'm like, I'm not the one saying that. These are your drink data. Like
Yeah.
this is objective. This isn't me trying to be kind to you and saying, "Oh, hey, yeah, no, it's not working, but you're doing a good job." I'm like, "This is your raw data right
Yeah.
here. Your raw data says you have reduced 15% over the last 2 weeks. Like you have to recognize that. It's like I pointed out to someone else a couple weeks ago. I'm like, based on what you're drinking, if you drink half a drink less every night, you're going to drop another 12%. And they're like, wait, what? And I'm like, yeah, half a drink. I'm like, I'm not even telling you to hey, try to have one less drink. I'm like,
Yeah.
try to have half. Try to have half. Because I think that what happens is when people are looking at their drink logs, like they're just looking at the numbers and those numbers are higher than they want them to be.
Yeah.
When I see trends in somebody's drink log where it's like, oh, wait, you're actually, you're just completely overlooking the fact that if you take this set of 4 weeks and then the last set of 4 weeks, yes, there's up and down, but overall, you've reduced by, I'm seeing people reduce 5, 10, 15% while looking at me and saying, yeah, it's been rough. I haven't seen any difference.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm seeing a difference. You're completely overlooking it. And it's and it's mind-boggling at times, and it's not really, because it's human nature. We all minimize ourselves. We tend to minimize
Yeah,
ourselves,
it's true.
because I mean, society says if you don't, then you're just full of yourself and you're a narcissist, and all of that. So most people tend to downplay their own successes, and so I do get it, but yet on the other hand, it's mind-boggling to me every single time someone, like, they're presented with like raw data that they're keeping that shows they're progressing, but because they believe extinction means they're not even going to think about alcohol anymore, they think they're failing. And that's why it's so important that people understand that extinction is one part of the Sinclair method. In fact, that's why Dr. Sinclair called it a dual treatment method. The extinction is only half the part, because it's what you do on those non-drinking days, those times when you're not having the extinction learning sessions, that is equally as important. And that's behavior change and habit disruption, and it doesn't have to be some crazy overhaul. I mean, if 5 p.m. is your time that you always take your medication with a 6 o'clock drink, then I mean, take a six-sided die and roll it and say, okay, I got a 2, so 5:20 is when I'm going to take my pill today. Or, oh, I got a 6, so I guess it's 6 o'clock. I'll go a full hour out.
That's fun way.
It just,
Gamify.
yeah, but yeah, well, and what it does is it keeps that time random. And by randomizing it, it breaks the habit. Because then that solid association with 5 o'clock it's no longer exactly 5 o'clock. Maybe it's 5:10. Maybe it's 5:30. Maybe it's 4:50. Yeah, but it's like, as long as it's not the same exact time, because the worst thing somebody can do on the Sinclair method is to build new drinking habits and new drinking patterns while trying to get rid of the old ones. So doing anything to keep it disrupted, no matter, in fact, if it's laughably small, even better.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, I remember reading a book about a guy who was wanting to lose weight and changing his habits, and his goal was 1 push-up a day. I was like, I love that, because it's starting so small.
it's consistent,
Yeah.
and that's the thing, oh, hey, back your drinking up 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But well, we are out of time, and it has, as always, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being a guest on our show. I was just looking at our Spotify Wrapped while I was waiting for you to log on, and like, I got to find a way to download it or something, because we like, it's been a really good season. And so I'm glad that we could end it with you, but like, our growth outpaced 84% of other shows.
Oh, it's so cool.
So we've being on Spotify videos has definitely helped increase the reach a bit, and so we thank you for being a part of this season, and as always, for sharing your expertise, and tell everyone where they can find you at Thrive.
Yeah, I appreciate the chance to come on. This is my favorite thing to talk about. I love talking about all things TSM. People can come to our website, thrivealcoholrecovery.com. Social media, the same name, always putting out videos and interviews and Q&As and things like that. So yeah, would love to connect with you guys. Thank you, Jenny.
All right. Thank you, Katie.